Good morning. Welcome to our next installment of Historical Weapons Foundations. Today, we're going to be working on something kind of fun. We're going to be working on the fighting fan based out of the Choi foot system for this one. Other systems definitely use this weapon as well, but our techniques are going to come out of the Choi foot system for today. So why don't we get ourselves started up here? Well, let's do a quick warm up. We're not talking about a heavy weapon this time, so shoulders can roll back. Shoulders can roll forward. So we've kind of been covering the ranges of weapons as we've been working on our spring sort of look at historical weapons. We started with the long range with our spear, to the other side, and then we went to our medium range with the double-edged sword. And today, let's look at our weapon for today. I have a couple here. I'm going to see which one shows up better on the screen. Black, let's see, red. I think red's invisible. Okay, well, let's go with our red fan today. So what do we have with the fan? So yes, you could potentially use the fan as a weapon. There's lots of ways that it can be used as a weapon, particularly this one's still a practice weapon, but ones that are made out of steel. Some of the historical ones have sort of sharpened tips all the way along, as well as on the ends. So they have a little bit of sort of thrusting capacity to them, or cutting just by cutting with the edge, the tips. But we're not talking about edged weapon with the fan. When the fan is closed, we're looking at a short range percussive weapon for the most part. So it would be very similar to having a short stick or a piece of steel in your hand. So we'll have movements that are going to be used as usual. We're going to see some real crossovers between all of these weapons, regardless of range. Now, we also have to remember that the fan was sometimes used as a way to hide practice of knife fighting techniques in a way that didn't sort of trigger people about training weapons and things like that in a period of time when the martial arts were trying to hide themselves a little bit more as performance based as opposed to fighting based. Another thing we have to look at is just historically, fans were something that people carried around during a particular period of time. And so to learn how to use something in hand for self-defense was valuable as well. So we've got two main states that we're going to work the fan in: closed and open. This is the one everybody loves because it makes such great sounds when we open it up or when we close it back down. But let's start a little bit with closed first. So one of the things we want to take into account is the fan has strengths in certain directions and not in others. So when we're holding the fan, we typically, let's see, how can I do this with a camera? We want to kind of pinch the flats of the weapon in between our thumb and forefinger and wrap around so that we are presenting the edges facing out. We do not want to present the flat facing out. The flat of the fan is not very strong. It will bend, it will break quite quickly. The edges is where I have the potential for striking. So I want to get my fan in the hand. So like we were talking about with the double-edged sword, we were sort of wrapping the fingers, not quite with this one. It's a little bit more fist-like in the way we're holding it, because sometimes we'll punch with it in our hands because it's a short-range weapon. Now, you'll also notice that I'm not holding the weapon right down at its very end, because in terms of using this as a weapon, the handle or the tail of it is used a lot for hammer fist style striking. So any directions that you might smash with a hammer fist kind of motion, downwards, outside, inside, inside low, any of those kind of motions, we're going to be using the end of the weapon. So we can look at those in terms of our sort of box shape, where you're using the end for temple, side of neck kind of striking from the outside direction, from the inside direction, from the downwards, and sometimes kind of that rising up, straight in. There's lots of different ways. So you can think about hitting with the end. Now, sometimes we're also using the end to do things like pull and trap. You know, someone grabs your wrist and you're kind of using the weapon. You can pry it inside. This is sometimes just used to pressure. So you might just pressure inside the throat, pressure to the side of the neck, under the armpits. So we have that tail end of the weapon. We have, with it closed, the edges. Now, these are not cutting edges unless that tip is a little bit sharpened, in which case you get a little bit of cut potential. But again, it's going to follow the patterns of a lot of the sword cuts that we were looking at. So if we're using these edges, we can think about doing our downwards diagonal strikes. Now they're going to be less cuts and more a little bit kind of percussive where we're hitting with it. You know, it's not a heavy weapon. It's going to be a lighter weapon and we're using it to distract, to strike. So we'd have our downwards diagonals like we did with our double-edged sword. Boom, boom. So we're hitting with it. We would have rising diagonals, so we could be striking upwards with the weapon, striking one side, other. We would have our horizontals, we're coming one way and the other. Again, if those tips are kind of sharpened, they could be dragging, but they could also be percussive, where we're sometimes instead of coming all the way through with percussive weapons, you might hit and return. So you might be working your horizontals as a way of striking and returning, or striking and coming through, striking and returning. And horizontals, like we talked about with the sword, can be up high. They can be across in the middle. Sometimes you even see places where we're kind of heading down into the ground and we're cutting and striking inside the legs with that. But notice what I need to do, just like with the sword, I need to get my edge angle and my strike angle working together, because as soon as I hit with those flats, I will break my weapon. I don't want to break the weapon. I want this weapon to be usable. So let's go through just a couple of those. So we're going down, 1, 2, 3. We could rise, 1, 2, 3. We've got our horizontals, 2, 3. Now we also, in the sword, talked about verticals, so down. That can be just a hit and return. So this kind of fits into that hammer fist idea. I could be hitting with the hammer fist or following through and striking with the weapon. So I could be hitting and returning. I could have this on the other side of my body. Remember, we were talking about the verticals coming down. So I'm hitting here and kind of almost like a back fist. I kind of snap that out and bring it back. So I could hit, I could follow through. So verticals, diagonals, and horizontals. We always seem to come back to those same kind of patterns. So once you learn some of these patterns, you can adapt them to different lengths and ranges of weapons. So what else do we have? So we had the hitting with the hammer. We have the striking with the edges, and then we have types of thrusting with the ends. And this is where if those ends were sharpened, they'd be a little bit more dangerous. So in terms of thrusting, we get some interesting ones here because we got the shorter weapon. Things we can't, a little harder to do with the longer sword is things like coming in from the outsides. So we have motions where we're hitting in. We have motions where we're hitting upwards. We have motions where we're hitting downwards. So we've got thrust rising. We've got thrust descending. We've got from the outside. We've got from the inside where we're turning it over and driving in with the end of the weapon. So down, up, outside, inside, and straight thrust, palm up, or sorry, palm in, and straight thrust here. So we just by changing those angles, we can, like we did, remember with the sword, we were twisting, driving out, and thrusting through. So we have all those kind of possibilities of thrusting as well. So we're striking, you know, sometimes we see with knife work, very repetitive. pressing with the end of the blade, and then we change angles. We could be thrusting here and then come over. We're hitting here, we're coming under, we're hitting up, we're coming in from one side to the other, and then we're cutting, hammering, striking. We've got all this stuff that we can do with this little short weapon in our hand. Fun. Now, we can also use it to deflect. So if the other person might have an edged weapon or something, and we want to protect our own body, again, we go back to our sort of descriptors of things like walls and roofs and, floor kind of work. So we could do wall. One, something's coming towards my face, bunk. I'm hitting it. Again, not with the flats, so I don't break my weapon. I hit with the edge one way. I could use the back of it, bang, I could hit the other way. So I've got this covering from side to side. One side, other side, one side, other side. Nice. I could create the kind of roof work where I'm pressing up one way or the other. So I've got this roof structure over my head and I'm blocking here or deflecting out here. So I could be deflecting. I could be taking that to the wall and I could go downwards. So I'm knocking something away. I could come the other way, knock something out of the way. I could push. I could push. So I've got all these ways of defending. I could turn, remember we were talking about with the double-edged sword last week, we could turn it out to deflect, but we could also just use it to the back side. Same here. I could turn here. I could kind of shift. So I've got one side, other side, up high, over on the side, down low, deflecting, scooping out of the way. So I'm covering. And then we want to think about lots of times we want speed. So we might cover up high and cut through. We might hit over here and then come through with that hammer. So we might deflect with the edge and either cut through or deflect and drive that hammering edge into place. So all sorts of different ways. And again, we're kind of covering around the body with it. So quick review of the things we talked about with it closed. One, we want to make sure that we are holding it in a way that we're not going to break or bend. We have the tail for hammering kind of motions. We have the edges for percussive and potentially slight cutting motions. We have the tip for thrusting motions from different angles, down, up, over, in, straight forward. And then we talked about using the weapon to deflect. Wall high, walls low, roof work. So we've got all these different ways that we're protecting the head, whether I'm making my roof here, I'm making my roof here, or off to the side. I'm defending that torso and body from strikes coming in, and then we blend those into our own strikes. Now, the more exciting thing about the fan, but not quite as useful for fighting, is when we open it up. So when we're going to open it, typically fans are mostly right-handed. So if you're left-handed and you've got a right-handed fan, it makes it very difficult to do this work. You need to have a right-handed fan. So we had that pinch position between our finger and our thumb and our wrap. So we're going to use our thumb to pull the lead edge towards us a little bit. We're going to pinch it between the finger and the thumb, and then we're going to just release and drop. Now, if it doesn't drop easily, either A, your fan might be a bit too tight, but it's probably that you've got the wrong side of the fan in your hand. So I pull the one that's on the thumb side and I release everything down. So I've kind of got this pinched position. Now, I need to keep the fan open. So after I open it up, I'm going to want to find a hand position that allows me to kind of cinch in here and clamp down on the fan so that I am sort of holding it splayed. And I want it in my hand here, kind of in a way that I can go back to all those angles. So the same angles we just did for our cuts, downwards diagonals, rising diagonals, verticals, horizontals. We can do a lot of these with the fan open. And, people will talk about the edged weapon potential here. You're cutting, you're slashing with it. I think it'd be often quite difficult for that to function, but it looks great. So we're cutting here, we're cutting there, we're cutting across, we're cutting back. Now, when we want to close the fan, we're going to roll our wrist backwards, release our fingers on the spines, and that's going to shoot it back into our hand again. So we'll have this variation, if you want to amuse yourself for hours, you go open, close, open, close, open, close. Now you want to get it to a place where you can go open and start to use it. You want to get it to a place where you can close and start to use it as well. Now, we can open and close the fan on the vertical. That's what we're doing right now. And we can also open and close the fan a little more styly on the horizontal. We can open it and close it on that horizontal plane. You can be really stylish, go open it on here and close it on the vertical. But we want to get that feeling here if we're just like we're cutting across. But as we cut across, we're starting to slide that pinch grip in between our finger and thumb, and then we release. And quite often when we do this, we start to kind of circle it up almost like a frisbee so that we can come back and start to make our cuts. So you could put together a pattern from the Choi foot set where you kind of go, boom, you brush, you bring it across, and next thing you know, you're cutting upwards. Then you're cutting downwards. And then you're thrusting the whole fan with the tips towards somebody. Let's try that sequence. It's kind of a fun one. So we go here, we brush our thigh, and we twist. We're cutting, and then we release. We circle it in. We get that grip. We kind of change that grip. We're kind of releasing to find that splayed position. So first it's kind of wrapped around here, and then we're kind of releasing slightly to get it to our splayed position. We cut up, we cut down, we thrust in. Now, a lot of what the fan opening does is just be a bit of distraction. If I have an altercation here and I open something noisy over here, people's eyes tend to go that way. So a great thing to do is something like this, like, hey, look over here, kick in the groin, punch in the face. So we're kind of distracting somebody off to the side. We can also distract somebody, and often this is used as a bit of a way to narrow vision. So sometimes you'll see where you open it up in the front, so a bit of a downwards vertical, and you'll place that, boom, in towards the other person's face, whether it's up or down. And then you kind of often do this. You place it in their face and then you open it out to the side. And they're like, hey, what's that? And you're hoping they're looking over here. And then you kick them in the groin and punch them in the face again. So we're using it as a distraction. We can open it, place it in there. We can close it. And as soon as we change this, maybe this is raising up. And as they're looking away, oh, there's a surprise. Boom, right out from behind it. While they're busy looking at the fan, again, we're going to be striking with the other limbs from there. Okay, so let's work a little bit on a sort of cut thrust pattern with the fan closed for now. So we're going to do one, we're going to go here. We're going to go over, under, 1, 2. So that'll be our starts to this. So we're thinking about going down, up from underneath, down on top, up from underneath. And let's add some horizontals to that. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. So vertical down, up from underneath. We could keep that going, right? The idea with short weapons is they're fast, they're repetitive. Boom, boom, I'm hitting down. And yeah, person's trying to cover one side, cover that, and this hand might be pressing their arms down, might shifting something out of the way. They get used to things coming high and low, and then we turn it into our slashes. Now those slashes could be me hitting with the edges, or if I've moved in close, as soon as I turn this over, there's those hammers that we were working on. So we could go down, up, slash, hammer, hammer. There's lots of ways we can start to work this. Let's get a little bit more aggressive. Now we're starting into a little bit more sort of knife fighting kind of work from this weapon. So you notice I've kind of got my weapon in to my body. I've got my hand covering. So this is easily used from high to low. High, low. From here, high, low, cut one way, hammer the other, pull through, straight stab, straight stab, straight stab. Nice. So we're not that rising one, but now we're pushing inwards. So down, up, cut one way, hammer the other, thrust, thrust in again. Good. Okay. Let's also think about, let's do that. Actually do that one more time. Keep that going. So down, up. Notice what I'm doing. I'm moving in. I'm pushing. I'm progressing. 1, 2. Then I'm thinking about cutting. Now I could cut across. I could cut back. I've got those hammers. I'm thrusting in. Now I have that person, and suddenly I open my fan and I swing it up in the air. I'm like, hey, look over there. And boom, I get my solid kick to the groin. So I might have been thrusting away here, or I'm like, hey, leave me alone. It's just me and my fan here. See my fan? Boom, I'm cutting. Or see my fan? It's opening. It's moving. I'm flashing it around, and I'm doing that outside of where I am. So the person's attention is moved away from me. So I've got potential strikes, then I might close it, come back in, and start hitting again. Okay, just a few things to work with from the fan today. Kind of a fun one. Astound and amaze your neighbors with your fighting fan techniques. So as a quick review, let's go through. We want to hold so that we are hitting with the edges. We want to leave enough butt end that we can use the hammers. We can use the edges for our deflections, knocking things away, creating roofs and moving. We have our basic patterns, downwards diagonals, rising diagonals, horizontals, verticals. We had our thrusts, same kind of idea. Straight thrusts, downwards thrust, rising thrust. Interesting with this fan, these little hooks from the outside or around, or sorry, from the inside to the outside, from the outside to the inside. So we're coming in. We could come in and down. So we've got thrust, down and up, side, side. And then what you can do is just kind of start to blend those. So you're thinking, oh, I deflect out here, I knock something away, I cut, I thrust in. As a quick review to remember how to open, if we're going on the vertical, we pull towards us, drop down, then we have to kind of shuffle our grip so we can use the weapon, all those same things, diagonals. Here we get these interesting kind of out up the center, out, defend the eyes, opening, showing up from behind the technique. Our close, we roll the wrist back, and we want to catch it in a way where we could be striking with it. And we had our horizontal opening, where we cut across, open, hook, change, cut again, get their attention away from you. We had these potential thrusts with the front of the fan, and then we can close it on that horizontal as well. Now, the last thing we can think about just before we finish is how this can be used in close range to pressure. Someone's holding on, and there's lots of places where you can kind of hook and pressure against the hands, or you can just take your fan. If someone's holding on, drive it into hands. You can go. Some of these rising thrusts would be someone holds on and you're coming around and driving that up into the armpit area, into the belly. There's pressure points in the insides and the outsides of the legs that you can hit with a short weapon. All right. Well, let's leave it there for today. You can work on, come back to, and keep thinking about some of these angles. Thanks for joining in today, and we'll see you again soon for some more work on some historical weapons. Thanks for trading.